I drive home, the Hannah edition. Ha-ha! Today, hey, Homer. Sunday driver's home. That's what it is. We had the Luke chapter 12 text, which is Jesus making fun of us for loving our stuff so much, which is great. But here's the sermon is about that, but you can listen to that. Someone remind me, I'll put the link there. But here's the thing that we didn't talk about today in the sermon that I'm interested in, Hannah. And that is this. So, number one, we know about Epicureanism, right? That Epicureanism is this practical philosophy named after Epicurus, the Greek guy. And whenever I talk about Epicureanism on the YouTubes, everybody busts my chops and they say, Epicureanism is not the same thing as hedonism. Hedonism is just maximized pleasure. Epicureanism is something different. It has the idea of not suffering, this attempt to avoid pain at all costs. And that's true. Now here's the idea. The idea with Epicurus is, he said that there's the two things that cause the most amount of pain and suffering in human life are, number one, the idea that God intervenes in this life. Or Epicurus would say the gods. So that the gods come and they mess with stuff. The thunderbolt is Zeus or whatever. Epicurus says that we can't think like that because then we think that the gods are always like kind of watching and judging. And that has to do with the second thing. Epicurus said that the second thing that causes the most trouble for us in life is the thought of judgment. The idea that when we die, we have to be judged. And Epicurus said that because these things cause the most trouble, we have to act then as if there is no judgment, and as if there is no involvement in life. Now, the interesting thing is that Epicureanism becomes hedonism pretty quickly. So the idea, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may die, becomes the slogan of Epicureanism pretty quick. Lucretius and all these guys. And so, while it is true that kind of pure Epicureanism is different than hedonism, this is going somewhere, by the way. That pure Epicureanism is not hedonism. Epicureanism becomes hedonism pretty quick. So that when Paul talks about the Epicureans in 1 Corinthians 15, he says, if Christ is not raised from the dead, let's eat and drink, because tomorrow we die. So you might as well do what you want. If death is death, and there's no judgment after death, because why would you deprive yourself of the things that you want now? The only shot you have at having the things you want is now, so you better embrace it. That's Epicureanism. Now, the curious thing to me is that the closest we get to that creed of Epicureanism, eat, drink, and be merry, is in Luke chapter 12. And Jesus puts that little creed, this is in the whole Bible, Jesus puts that creed, let us eat, drink, and be merry, in the mouth of this rich man in the parable. And remember how the rich man was? He had this huge bumper crop. So he had so much crops, he didn't have a place to put them all. So he says, I know what I'll do. I'll tear down my barn and build myself a bigger barn, have a place for all my junk, and he can sit around and after he builds his barn, he has this plan to build a new barn to hold all his junk. The man talks to himself and says, self or soul, depending on how you translate it. It says, soul, take it easy, relax. Eat, drink, and be merry. Now here's the thing that I think is very interesting. So that guy, the rich fool, says, eat, drink, and be merry. And Jesus says, but you don't realize that tonight your soul is demanded of you. Tonight you will die. So eat, drink, and be merry, because tomorrow I'll live. That's what the guy thinks. And Jesus says, no, eat, drink, and be merry, but tomorrow, don't you realize that today you have to die? So that Jesus has such a profound understanding of death that Jesus uses the tomorrow you will die against the eat, drink, and be merry. That for Jesus, he can't imagine a death without judgment. Jesus can't even imagine death coming to us as an excuse. I can't tell. Is this all making sense? I can't tell if this is making sense. So Jesus says that you're going to die, and the fact of your death undoes the Epicurean hedonistic creed. Now, I think this is maybe the point, is that we all instinctively know that it's appointed for man once to die and then to be judged. We instinctively know that death is followed by judgment. And so even though the Epicurean says, hey, dead is dead, so do what you want, there's not going to be a judgment, we know better than that. It's just built into the conscience. It's baked into who we are. This idea of judgment. So we have the question of how are you going to stand on the way of judgment? And Jesus, as he tells the parable, is saying, all your junk is not going to help you. You're not going to be able to reach the day of judgment and say, oh yeah, okay, I got to be judged, but look at this big house that I've got, or look at the fancy car, or look at these piles of gold, or whatever. You know all these jokes? If you know, by the way, a better joke than this, then you should put it in the thing, because I need some better jokes. But you know, the joke is the guy that gets to heaven and there's the angels. And the guy has a bag with him. And the angels say, hey, you can't bring stuff with you to heaven. And he says, well, I know you're not supposed to bring stuff to heaven, but look, I was really, really rich. And so I don't know if you could maybe give me an exception. Could maybe I bring some stuff with me? And the angel says, well, let me see what you have in the bag. And the guy opens the bag, and in the bag he has all his wealth in bags, in these bars of gold. And he opens it up, and there's these hundreds of bars of gold that are there in the bag. And the angel says, well, why would you want to bring concrete? Well, I messed up the punchline. Why would you want to bring pavement? We need a better joke than that. YOLO. You only live once? Yeah. YOLO. That's Epicureanism, is YOLO?
Just to do dumb stuff.
Oh man.
So you're gonna die.
You're gonna die anyway, so you might as well live it up. YOLO. Man, Sunday drive home just got a lot cooler with Hannah in here. But this is the point, is that there's a judgment after death, and that affects the way we live. The fact that we have to stand to be judged changes the way we live. And we know that instinctively because we're all trying to build the case for our own righteousness on the judgment day. That's this expert at self-justification. But we realize that it doesn't hold up. We can't justify ourselves. We can't save ourselves. We can't attain to a righteousness that's going to pass on the judgment day. And so the only hope for us is that Jesus will stand next to us. And our only hope is that being provided with the cloak of his righteousness will enter into eternal life. How would you say, YOLO, you only live once? You only are judged once. You're only judged once. You only live twice?
Only live forever.
How about this? Yeah,
That's
YOLI.
like,
You only live forever.
Yolf. What?
Oh yeah,
Why?
eternally. Yolf. You only live forever.
So
And that changes things. Yolf is different than...
would say YOLO, and the Christian would say Yolf.
Yolf. That's the new guy. You guys got it? Hashtag Yolf. You only live forever. Ha! That's our hope. Hey, we should have Hannah. We should have Hannah for every Sunday drive home.
I'll summarize your sermon.
Oh yeah. Yeah. What else?
Teenage.
What else for you? You're the cultural translator. Anything else from the sermon that needed to be?
I don't know. A broke college It's not like material wealth. It's not like.
It's easy. Yeah, that's
there
right.
for me.
I always liked the preaching of Jesus against mammon when I didn't have any, because it was like, yeah, stick it to the richies. But it's easy to be a communist when you don't have anything, when you're a college student. But it is true that the idol of money, it can get you if we're rich or if you're poor. There's this, I didn't talk about this in the sermon. There's a bell curve of money and happiness that they've actually studied. And they say that as you make more money, you get happier and happier until you get to a certain point. And then if you keep making more money, you get sadder and sadder. So there's like a zone of how much money you make, and it's like peak happiness, and it's not that much. It's like $70,000 a year. And once you make more than that, you're less and less happy. And my guess is because if you don't have that much, you're just struggling to pay all the bills. If you have more than that, then you're struggling to figure out how to keep what you've got. So, anyway. But the point for the Christian is that our happiness is disconnected from our physical state. So Paul says, I've learned to be happy in all circumstances. If we're hungry or if we're full.
There would to be all things, there would be content.
Yeah.
That one?
I think, well, there's a different one in 2 Corinthians, but that's
No,
yeah, no, that's
Philippians.
right. That's right. That's in Philippians. Paul says, I've learned to be content in all circumstances, and he gives the list, and he says, having much and having little, being hungry, being full, being healthy, being sick, being alive, being dead, being persecuted, or being exalted, content in all things. So there's a Christian contentment that exists in spite of our circumstances. So it's this realization that if we have Jesus, we have everything that we need, and He'll take care of us.
With people too. With people too.
What do you mean?
Like, I don't know, dust to dust. So possessions and people aren't, like, you can't, like, you're not mine. Like, even, like, mom isn't yours. Like, you guys are married here, but then, like, when you guys die in heaven, you won't be married anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
Because nothing's yours. It's all God's.
You know, Hannah's breaking my heart because she's going to college, and now she's preaching to me, so I'll be ready for that. Oh, next week! But it's true. So we sing. This is how we sing in the hymn. We say, "Take they our life, goods, fame, child, and wife." That even, in all circumstances, the Lord comes to us and gives us His gifts, even as those that we love die and go to heaven. We all. So that we're set in this life not to be Epicurean, not to only live once, and then forget about it. Just maximize our pleasure, this hedonism, but rather, in some ways, we're preparing our lives to meet the Lord on the Judgment Day, and we're not preparing by piling up a resume of good works, but we're preparing by simply rejoicing in the forgiveness of our sins and being clothed in the righteousness of Christ. And when we have those, when we're adorned with the jewels of the righteousness of Christ and decked in the rich garments of His perfection, then we're ready for that last day.
That's why in the prayer at church we pray to be withdrawn from earthly pleasures to focus on the pleasures to come.
That's right. I thought you were going to say how poetic what I said was.
That was poetic.
Oh. All right, Sunday drive home. What?